Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time around, we finished up Inferno. What was that about?
Well, it actually started out as a relatively routine, mad scientist drilling, and everybody says, no, you need to stop, and he won't do it. And it's the first two episodes we were going, haven't we seen this before? And then, out of nowhere, this kind of little subplot, the Doctor was trying to tinker with the TARDIS. He's taken the console out and he's working on it, and apparently shifts him into a completely different dimension where everything has changed except for the drilling, and they're literally going to blow up the Earth if they continue to break through to the Earth's core. And it all comes to pass, and he manages to ultimately convince the people that there's no help for them, but they've got to help him get back to his dimension so that he can stop it there, which he ultimately does. And I was just thinking, I didn't know of any specific drilling in the early 70s that would have caused alarm like this. But I think, kind of like the Land of Giants, whatever that was, which we thought was kind of, based on Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, the use of DDT and all those pesticides and everything that were starting to hurt the environment. This may have been simply a very interesting way of projecting, with all the kinds of oil drilling and everything else that we're doing to the Earth, that we could conceivably end up blowing up the planet without wanting to. And this was a way of showing, here's what could happen, and then when the Doctor goes back, he's able to say, I've seen what can happen, and now we need to be very much more careful about what we're doing going forward in this dimension.
Yeah, definitely. Because, that was the whole thing, was that Stallman was going over, all the limits and stuff just because he wanted to penetrate the Earth's crust. But he wasn't... And granted, he was under the influence of goo, but still.
Yes, the goo.
Yeah, the goo that was never explained, though according to the comments, we shouldn't ask what the goo is. So...
Well, I haven't seen the comments yet.
Yeah, well, I've seen a couple of the comments, at least from patrons. And that's fine. We're not trying to specifically dog you guys or anything, but it is just one of those things where it's like this sentient goo that turns people into werewolves, and I'm apparently not supposed to question that, or just there is no explanation, and it's okay that there's no explanation.
Then kind of one last thing right there at the end, the Doctor thinks he's got the TARDIS fixed and he's going to get away, and it literally deposits him 100 yards away, and he comes back in. He's literally been put into the county dump. I think the rubbish tip is what he called it.
Yeah.
But before he left, he literally insulted the Brigadier to his face, and then had to go, it's all water under the bridge. And then we go from there, assuming as we start the second season of the Third Doctor, that there's still going to be some tension between the Brigadier and the Doctor.
Maybe. Yeah, that he did definitely have to go back with his tail between his legs on that one. But yeah, also, we can just go ahead and say, we've already seen this episode.
Yes, this was in our tour of Classic Who way back when.
Yes, this was the first time we had ever seen the Third Doctor, Terror of the Autons. So we are going to be rewatching it here. And now we're going to understand the context a bit more.
Well, I'm looking at the thumbnail, and obviously the big thing is we don't have Liz anymore.
Yes, I do remember that this was the episode that introduced Jo Grant as the Third Doctor's companion. I don't remember if they said anything about Liz, but then again, I didn't have any context for who Liz was, so maybe there was just a line I'm not remembering, but
I have to say, I enjoyed Liz because she reminded me, I told you before, she reminds me of Barbara.
Yeah.
She was a highly competent companion, helped the Doctor in many ways, basically kind of said, look, I know that you're this incredibly smart guy, but here's what you don't quite understand, that, perhaps I can help you to, come to a better conclusion about. So I really did enjoy her. She's also a great foil for the Brigadier.
Yeah.
Because she stood up to him and said, you're thinking with your military mind again. So,
yeah.
I only vaguely remember Jo, so I guess we'll get introduced to her and see where she fits in on the companion scale.
If I remember correctly, and it has been years, but if I remember correctly, I don't think Jo is quite like Liz. I think she might be a bit more towards the... Well, maybe, I don't want to say maybe a bit towards more Victoria, maybe, or, maybe not the most useful, but I'm pretty sure she is still a member of UNIT, so that's got to count for something. And it's entirely possible I'm just remembering it completely wrong. So, after we watch this episode, by the way, we're actually going to be going over a quick Q&A. So, last week on Twitter, I didn't even tell you about this, but last week on Twitter, I said that we were going to be rewatching this episode, and I said, hey, if you have any questions for us to answer, go ahead and leave them. I think we got a couple questions, so we'll be going over those during the discussion. Probably won't be doing that again during the Pertwee era. I think once per era is probably good enough, so we'll be doing that. Also, another thing we're doing today is we are going to be watching a 12th Doctor episode.
Yay.
Not in this video. That would be a little too much, but in a separate video that'll be going up probably an hour or so after this video goes up. We'll be watching the 12th Doctor episode, Mummy on the Orient Express. So, this will be Dad's introduction to the 12th Doctor.
Yes, but not Agatha Christie. I mean, seriously, somebody in the comments when we were talking about, having me do the 14th Doctor, somebody said, literally the only role I haven't played.
Yeah.
But I have been in Agatha Christie's Mousetrap, and I have been in... what's the other one? I'll come back to it. I'll remember it at some point. But yeah, I've done 2 different Agatha Christie's.
Yeah, so we'll be doing that because it seems right, since we're doing a rewatch this time around, to also throw in something new. And if you don't know why we're specifically going to the 12th Doctor, is because we have introduced you to the 9th, 10th, and 11th Doctors. Yes. Those episodes are in the classic Doctor Who playlist, but I've also since put them in their own Dad Reacts Modern Doctor Who playlist. So for the 9th Doctor, it was Dalek. For the 10th Doctor, it was Waters of Mars. For the 11th Doctor, it was The Doctor's Wife. And then we did the 50th anniversary. So,
which was really good.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Day of the Doctor.
So, we'll be doing that in the same day. But first, we have to rewatch Terror of the Autons. You got anything else?
I got nothing.
Then let's go ahead and jump into part 1.
Remember, we thought that was pretty weird that a TARDIS looked like an old truck.
Yeah.
I am usually referred to as the Master.
Oh, is that so?
Universally.
Well, I am Luigi Rossini.
I don't want to set the world on fire.
Choose your song more carefully, Doc.
Got a new coat.
I'm your new assistant.
Oh, no.
The Brigadier sent me along to introduce myself, Doctor. Josephine Grant.
How do you do, Miss Grant? But I really don't think you're suitable.
But who would want to steal it?
Exactly. Who and why?
Well, she's asking the right questions for a companion.
Again, really good matte effect in the background there. Makes it actually look like they're up on the radio telescope.
Well,
those things would never move that quickly.
Been agitating for a new assistant ever since Miss Shaw went back to Cambridge.
Liz was a highly
there we
qualified
go.
scientist. I want someone with the same qualifications.
Nonsense. What you need, doctors, Miss Shaw herself so often remarked, is someone to pass you your test tubes and to tell you how brilliant you are. Miss Grant will fulfill that function admirably.
no.
Oh,
I'll reassign her.
good.
But I think you should break the news to her yourself.
But now, wait a minute.
Hi, Doc. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Miss Grant.
I've checked all incoming reports. Still nothing on the stolen meteorite.
Thank you.
And I've chased those electronic spares you wanted. They promised delivery tomorrow without fail.
Miss Grant, thank you, Joe. I can see you're going to be of great help to me.
Thank you, Doctor.
I like that Jo is kind of like she's kind of like a puppy dog. You can't be mad at her.
That's a very early 70s haircut. Jane Fonda wore that in several of her movies there in the late 60s and early 70s.
Don't go away, Doctor! My coordinates seem to have slipped a little. Still not bad after 29,000 light years. I do hope you
I feel like that should be in a Doctor Who out of context video.
The Master has learnt a great deal since you last met him.
I refuse to be worried by a renegade like the Master. He's an unimaginative plodder.
You're somewhat of a
His
renegade,
degree in
Doctor.
cosmic science was... Oh. Good luck.
Well, thanks for the heads up, you weirdo.
Hartnell was not tall enough that he could have reached that.
No. Maybe that's what the Master was banking on. Troughton couldn't have done that either.
What do they look like?
I suspect myself their basic form is analogous to a cephalopod.
What's a cephalopod?
An octopus. I thought you took an A-level in science.
Didn't say I passed.
No.
Ugh, an octopus.
Yes, I'll set up a search right away. Yates.
Right, sir.
Can I help,
Where's
sir,
Benton?
please?
I was about to ask.
Very well, Miss Grant.
Excuse me, sir. I've just had a call from the civil police. They found Philip's car abandoned.
Where?
In a field about 9 miles from the research station.
Oh, that's
And
Benton.
they say there's a zinc box.
Now, again, that background looks like it was green screened in.
Yeah.
Stop that, that's a bomb!
Good job, Yates. Alrighty. Wow, that is part one.
Well, I remember all the business in the radio telescope tower there. I don't remember any of the rest of this, so...
Yeah. Definitely big changes. I mean, the most obvious one being Joe instead of Liz. But this whole lab that the Doctor has that he never had last season. I think it wasn't it like for the first episode of season 7 they had to like film everything on location?
Yeah.
So maybe it's just that they never were able to build a set. And I mean, to be fair, for most of those other 3 stories, the Doctor was always somewhere else. This is actually at Unit, so now they finally have a lab for him.
But I seem to recall in one of the later episodes, and I don't remember if it was Peladon or not, but they literally built a set that looked very much like that first real place that they had, because it had the door in the background with the glass windows and everything.
Yeah, definitely. Like, maybe they just every season they change the set or something. I mean, which I guess is possible, but it seems a bit strange. The other change I definitely notice is Yates. Now we just finished watching the entirety of season 7. They ever mention Yates?
Not that I recall.
I don't think they did. And it's like, oh well, he was the one that cleaned up the Nestines last time. It's like, was he? And it seems like he's definitely higher rank than Benton. Like, he almost seems like the Brigadier's second in command, basically.
Yeah. But isn't Yates a sergeant? I thought Benton was like a lieutenant. Or, sorry, lieutenant.
Yeah. Don't get me started on pronunciation. That's that one, which whatever, lieutenant, I honestly don't care. But still, there's no F in that word, so y'all are just crazy on that one. So, unless they spell it like that, because I guess they spell aluminium differently, but still.
Well, they do put the extra I in aluminium.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's still Lieutenant, but it's pronounced lieutenant for some reason.
Alright, I'm going to need some explanation on that.
I still don't understand how SCHOOL is school, but SCHEDULE is schedule.
Yeah. So alright, time for you guys to come up to bat for your home country and your home language. So, we're bringing you to court on this one. But anyway, yeah, Yates, it just seems odd. It's like they're really treating him like, oh yeah, he's been here the whole time. It's like, well, we've had Benton the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's equally like if it was just like a whole Liz Joe thing, like, oh well, we just don't have Benton anymore, so here we have Yates. That would be one thing. But then we still had Benton anyway.
Yeah.
So,
and again, why would Liz go back to Cambridge and not tell the Doctor that's what she was doing?
Yeah. Was it that, or... Well, no, I think she did say it. It's just that he's still angry about it.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's just like, oh wow, yes, you've been sour ever since Liz went back to Cambridge. I think that was it. It's that she did say, it's just that he hasn't found anyone good enough, and now he's just gonna have to settle for Joe. So.
Well, it's the wrong colour and the wrong texture. Of course it's ruined.
You don't appreciate its full potential,
No,
do you?
and I don't want to. It doesn't meet our specification.
This plastic has got unique properties, Mr. McDermott. Allow me to demonstrate.
Wonder if McDermott is north of England or actually Scottish, because he doesn't have a really thick Scottish accent.
Well.
Yes. The old blow-up beach chair.
No, I will not tolerate his insults.
I'd forgotten the chair's eating him.
Well. Really had to work to get a kill like that.
Why don't you keep this for a while? Think it over. I don't want the thing. Ah, but I insist. You're wasting your time. Not at all. I'm simply trying out a new product.
He really has to put in a lot of work to get these kills.
Just do as the Brigadier says.
Yes, of course, you're quite right.
So, Benton is a sergeant, and this guy is now, obviously, his superior. He's an officer of some kind.
Well.
Because instead of the stripes on the arm, he's got the brass on his shoulder.
Well.
Doesn't occur to you to turn the heat off?
Crack a window.
Ah, yes. We don't have those windows anymore.
You know, because we have actual windows. Just crack your window.
I sent the staff home as you ordered, Colonel.
The car will lure the doctor to the circus, and there I shall destroy him.
It's a very elaborate plan. We don't normally get that.
I use this example of the elephants turning around so quickly like that when I talk about how woolly mammoths could kill the early Paleo Indians, because if they're on flat ground, they can spin around quickly, hit you with a trunk or a tusk, and they literally turn your body to jelly.
What? Oh, that's right.
Is that Toberman?
Yeah, I forgot about him. And that was the thing, was we watched those 2 episodes back to back, so we really recognized him.
In green screen work.
Well,
but very good for the 70s.
Yeah, 1971. Why didn't you kick it? Also, was there a very quick shot of her green screened into a kitchen?
I couldn't really tell.
I think it was.
What happened?
You know, I just realized.
What are
That
you
might be the
doing?
first time they've shown blood. Oh, good drift. What happened to a military jeep?
Excuse me, officer, could I see your warrant card?
They are creepy. They are definitely creepy. But I don't remember them being beaten by a mob of circus folk.
No.
But I do remember them being picked up by the not police.
Yeah.
So.
But you would think that Lethbridge Stewart and, was it Yates?
Yeah.
Would follow them. I mean, they weren't that far behind.
Yeah, so. It's also just strange, you know, they showed that one shot of the car, and I thought, wait, is that unit people? And it's like, well, don't they normally have like a Jeep or a more military-looking vehicle? And then it's like, nope, I guess not. I guess that's just the Brigadier's car or something. I don't know. Maybe it's Yates' car.
Or, yeah, military police or something.
Yeah, so. You know, if I was smart, I would have found my notes from the last time we watched this.
How long ago was that, though?
2018, I think. Late 2018. I think I still have that notebook.
Now, do these Autons have the guns? Do I remember that correctly?
I think they do.
Yeah.
Oof.
More like hand cannons.
Oh, yeah. It's like the Judas bullet from Luke Cage. Yates is using his head.
Oh, that's gotta hurt. Even for a stuntman.
Yeah.
That's very good.
And the more he struggles to postpone the moment, the greater the ultimate satisfaction.
You know, since we've been talking about James Bond with this era, the Master makes a whole lot more sense now.
Captain Yates, we will continue this conference.
Captain Yates, Sergeant Benton.
Alright.
You know, Joe, I sometimes think that military intelligence is a contradiction in terms.
Not very grateful,
There's an old saying that military music is to music as military intelligence is to intelligence.
I'll apologize.
What's the joke?
Well, I've just thought of something. My TARDIS might not work. Neither will his now. Whatever he is, he's trapped on Earth.
Oh, well, good job. You know, if you see that guy on the street, you don't go up to him.
They shop at the same tailor shop that Elton John does.
No.
Now, again, talk about a costume note. Here's the costume designer who says, I've got to come up with, a dozen identical, oversized human heads.
My husband didn't like him at all.
What was his name?
Colonel Masters.
I like that they both have very obvious fake names.
Perhaps the gent likes to walk up and down while he's talking.
Sounds very like him.
Well, that's it then.
You really need a whole guy to bring in a telephone?
This was back before we could do it ourselves. There was no plugins back then. They actually had to wire it.
Alright.
Let's try the head.
Guess they learned from the previous creepy doll heads being sewn.
It appears to be solid plastic too.
Showing just his face.
That's no good.
So the Master installed the phone then. I don't remember that.
Well, now, wait a minute. You didn't by any chance use my Bunsen burner, did you?
Well, yes.
Well, that's it then, heat. This thing was lying alongside my Bunsen. It must be triggered off by a predetermined temperature. Hello, yes, what is it?
Hello, Doctor, is that you?
Who is this? What do you want?
Simply to say goodbye, Doctor.
Well, it's not the Pertwee era unless he makes some stupid face.
I was going to say, surely by now, I mean, they're second year in, and again, I understand they don't want it to be too frightening for the kids, but that's appalling.
Yeah, I mean, I guess... Did he only do it once last season?
He did it with the Autons, and then he did something else with it, too.
He did...
Remember
I think there was...
When the octopus was trying to strangle him.
Yeah. It might have been... Inferno, I think, or something. Well, I remember Ambassadors of Death, he had to, because he had the G-forces when he was going up in the rocket. And then in Inferno, they did that crazy effect the first time he almost went to the other dimension. Yeah. And they were doing weird camera effects and stuff. So, yeah. But I mean, I guess it's just when... those two times are okay. It's specifically when he has to, act like something is strangling him. Then it gets a little too
pain,
much. Yeah, so...
And again, the simple thing about that, I mean, if I were a director and I saw that, on my screen, I would say, John, here's what you do. Instead of opening your eyes, just close them. Just clench it up. That's a much more effective look.
Yeah, it really is his eyes that sort of push it over the edge, so... It's also interesting they established this whole thing about heat, and then immediately the master just uses a sound anyway, and it's like, well, okay, I guess, it's the specific sound, or, it's just that those work on heat, some work on sound, but it's like, that is strange that they just establish that and then immediately go to a different thing. Yeah. So.
Hello, Doctor. Is that you?
Who is this? What do you want?
How does he not recognize his voice?
Simply to say goodbye, Doctor.
I think there is technically a theory that this is the Master's last life on this regeneration cycle, so.
The Nestians can put life into anything made of plastic. Anything at all.
I see. And there's a lot of plastic around.
I mean, that is pretty dangerous. This is plastic. These are plastic. Those are plastic. This, I guess, is plastic, too. Our buttons are plastic.
I've got the RAF to lay on a rocket strike. In a few hours' time, that coach will be a pile of scrap iron.
The military mind at its most scintillating.
No.
Faced with a problem, they blast it off the face of the earth.
What do you think?
That is a pretty serious thing to do.
Shortwave radio. You must have triggered it off with that walkie-talkie. Of course, they must be planning to set them all off at once with a gigantic radio signal.
So I guess the sound from the heaters also triggered them?
Yeah. Joe, be careful. Joe! It's all over. You all right?
Just a bit short of breath. What happened?
Well, your nose and mouth were sealed off with this.
You know what, that might have been a good moment to have a knife.
I see you've been working on the Nestine Autojet. My own small contribution to their invasion plan.
Vicious, complicated, and inefficient. Typical of your way of
Now,
thinking.
come, Doctor. Death is always more frightening when it strikes invisibly.
If I can just reach these brake pedals.
Doctor, if you're going to drive, I want to get off.
And you have the Brigadier's keeping his eyes open.
I-O-N. That's it. Read that back, Fenton.
Daffodils are lethal. Activated soon. Destroy immediately. Guard radio research station.
Benton,
Must have taken
signal
ages
alert
to,
police. I want radio and TV warnings.
signal that out.
Bands, house to house, the lot.
Yikes. Oof. Oh, there's a military jeep.
Yikes. Yeah. Gotta admit, the stunt work's getting much better.
Yeah.
Get some more men. Right.
Stretcher party, get a sponge.
Your precious little planet is finished. We're finished, then you're finished too. Nonsense! I helped them to come here. Do you really think that that thing will distinguish between you and us?
Perhaps didn't quite think that through.
They never do.
No. Well, good job. Oh. Vesa broken.
Well, Doctor, it worked.
Shoot him.
Oh, well, they shot him.
I don't remember that.
I don't either.
Although now that I think of it, isn't he an
Well, that's
Auton?
the end of him.
Well, yeah, now that you mention it. Oh, it was Farrell.
And now he's stuck here on Earth.
Yes. I'm afraid so.
Think you'll turn up again, Doctor?
Bound to.
You don't seem very worried about it.
I'm not. As a matter of fact, Joe, I'm rather looking forward to it.
Don't remember. I vaguely remember that it was an Auton, or in that case, the feral guy.
Yeah.
But I don't remember him being stuck there.
Well, it's one of those things I definitely remember these about 1 second before they're said. So, yeah, I did kind of remember that, and I was like, oh, man, that's kind of interesting. He's stuck there, too. But then, of course, we moved on to something else, so I didn't really think of it afterwards. But, I mean, that means he could come back next episode, for all we know.
Yeah.
He could be, like, a season-long villain, which we've never really had that on Doctor Who before. No. So, alrighty. Well, that is Terror of the Autons, and like all the other times we rewatch an episode, it's much better the second time around.
Yeah, very enjoyable.
Yeah. And they're always good the first time around, too. Yeah. So, it's just nice having everything in context. You understand everything. So.
And again, for some reason, I also thought that the Time Lord reappeared there at the end, but I guess he didn't.
Well, yeah. So, I definitely remember him just sort of popping in the sky, and that was pretty much that.
Looking very much like John Cleese from the Ministry of Silly Walks.
Yeah, so... Alright, so... going over the notes, I mean, the first thing I wrote down is the Master. And, you know, we've always said that he's very much a Moriarty to the Doctor's Sherlock Holmes. And I'm sure half of that was inspired by Moriarty and why they would, you know, keep bringing him back. He's the Doctor's ultimate rival. Very different from the Daleks or the Cybermen or anything like that. But after last season, where we keep talking about all these comparisons to James Bond and everything, he honestly does kind of feel like a Bond villain as well. Yeah. So,
and again, very subtly played. You know, just that's to me, that's the way to do it. You know, when you get the guys, you know, like the Doctor in the last 7 episodes, when they're over the top like that, they get very grating on the nerves after 1 or 2 episodes.
And honestly, so let's say, in terms of our villains we've had for Pertwee, Autons being the first one, obviously, and then what came after that? The Silurians, they were good. The Ambassadors of Death, that really just boiled down to General Carrington, who, you know, standard sort of military type villain.
Yeah.
And then I guess Stallman. The Master is honestly a nice breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, very much, you know, we say, like, you know, I'm sure half of it was inspired by, you know, a James Bond type villain, the other half Moriarty. Although, honestly, they've already done this before because we had the War Chief in the War Games. Like, I'm sure, especially with the look and everything, that is directly lifted. And I think this was Robert Holmes. Didn't he also... I think he also wrote the War Games.
Could be, yeah.
I think so. So yeah, that would make sense. Of course, at that point, it almost makes me wonder why not make him the War Chief. But I don't know. Maybe I guess just because, you know, that was 2 seasons ago and another Doctor. Maybe they just wanted to start fresh, you know. So at the very least, like, all right, we're going to, you know, have this character and establish him as this great rival and this recurring villain for the Doctor. Let's at least start fresh and, you know, and still building on the War Chief established in the War Games, but creating a new thing specifically for Pertwee. So,
and there seems to be 3 kinds of Time Lords. There's the official ones, and then there's the ones like the Doctor and the meddling monk, the Time Meddler, who are not out to, you know, destroy the world. They're just out. They're curious. They want to see what happens. And the meddling monk, of course, is just the kind of guy that says, you know, I'd like to see what would have happened if I had done this. You know, that's because he's not evil. He's weirdly curious.
Yeah, I guess for the meddling monk, I guess he was more a proactive version of the Doctor, where he's specifically going to change time. The Doctor really just wants to observe time. It's just that he happens to be involved in so many things. Yeah. And he tries to preserve history.
And now you've got the War Chief and now the Master, who are obviously people who say, you know, the Time Lords have screwed it up, and do-gooders like the Doctor need to be eliminated. And, you know, again, that is one kind of weak link there. Is at the very end when the Doctor says to him, you don't really think that they're going to differentiate between you and me or you and us. You know, surely he's smart enough to have realized that. You know, when you're dealing with the Daleks or the Autons or the Nestines or, you know, the Great Intelligence, don't think that you can control them because you will not be able to.
Well, yeah, I do. There is that. There's also the thing of, well, if anyone would try, it would be the Master. But you would think, like, yes, it's the whole thing of, they're not going to differentiate between us. They'll go after you. You would think the Master would have a backup plan, if that were the case, to make sure that, he can still use them to destroy humanity. Because at the end of the day, he is using the Nestines and the Autons to attack the Earth. It's just that he happens to be using them. He could have used anything, really. So you would think that he would have a backup plan. Now, granted, this is his first appearance, so you can kind of, let go of that a bit. You can sort of let that go. Whereas we're kind of looking at this from, the point of view of, we have seen, I guess you haven't seen a ton, but we have seen where they go with the Master and how he is, one of the greatest adversaries to the Doctor. So we're sitting here thinking, well, he would have a backup plan or something like that so that it would still go his way. But first episode, you can kind of forgive that.
Now, the Nestines wanted to take over the Earth and get rid of the people so they could take over the planet as a new home planet, or what was their original plan?
I think it was something like that. I wonder if I still have... I wonder if I can decipher my notes enough to figure that out. That's Attack on Titan. Nope, that's the War Games. That's still the War Games. Where did I put it? Meteorites, Star Slab, plastics, government, attack, weapons, tentacles, okay, that doesn't help. Well, it might have been that they were going to... Weren't they going to, replace government officials and stuff? I remember that was part of it, but maybe it was they were looking for a new homeworld, so that's why they were trying to take the Earth.
But what's the Master's motivation? Why does he hate humans? Why is he in league with the Nestines in the first place?
I mean, yeah, that's a good point, because they do bring it up later that it's more that when he tries to take over or destroy humanity, it's because it will specifically hurt the Doctor. So you could kind of argue that's the same here, but they don't really bring that up. It's I suppose it's more.
They talk
implied.
about how they have a past, but they didn't actually say anything. What happened between the two of them.
Yeah, that's true. You probably would not be able to guess that. Later on they'll say oh yes, well they grew up together. They were childhood friends, and then eventually he just sort of turned away from it all. There's one moment with the 12th Doctor where he's talking about the Master. And he says, yeah, we were childhood friends. We would look up at the stars, and we wanted to see all the stars, go out and see them all. But he was too busy burning them. So that's sort of it, is that they started off the same, but he divulges into to what he becomes now. Yeah. But you probably wouldn't get that off of this first episode. And especially he also says that he's had other adversaries too. Yeah. So there's only a few Time Lords that he finds as worthy rivals, and the Doctor is just one of them. Yeah. So it's definitely one of those things where, yes, we're sitting here thinking about where the Master will go, after 1971, but we do sort of have to judge the Master on how he's portrayed in this episode alone. So,
by the way, diverge, not divulge.
Yes.
Just in case somebody was going to say something.
I'm sure I meant to say that. So.
I know you did, but just because we have some very astute listeners who would say, "Oh, didn't you mean diverge?"
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just the YouTube comment section in general. So, let's see. Well, the next thing I wrote down is Jo Grant, our newest companion.
Okay, so very useful in the fact that she is a trained unit officer, whatever she is.
Yeah.
She's got some skills. But again, she's not Liz.
Yeah.
Liz was, in my opinion, again, one of the better companions because she was very useful to the Doctor. Jo seems to be simply to appeal to the audience. She doesn't really fit the all plot, the arc of Doctor Who, but does seem to harken back to the young pretty girl. Not necessarily that she's always the damsel in distress or anything.
Yeah.
But again, going back to Hartnell, the first Doctor, and Ian and Barbara. Liz was very much a Barbara.
Yeah.
She is more like a Vicky or Zoe.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a difference of Jo is definitely the Doctor's assistant, whereas Liz seemed to be more than just the Doctor's assistant. Yeah. I would have liked, and maybe they could still do this, I would have also liked, because she doesn't have, she doesn't have much on the science side, but she does what the Doctor tells her to do. I would have liked if she then sort of became like Jamie and was sort of the fighter too.
Yeah.
Which, as we always joked, was also very much Barbara. So, that's the thing. We'll never have someone as well-rounded as Barbara. Yeah. She was smart and could fight and kill people at a moment's notice. So,
she was a good teacher then.
Yeah. So yeah, I would have liked that if maybe Jo had a bit more on the fighting side, because the Doctor, while yes, the Doctor has his occasional moments of fighting, it is normally down to whatever unit officer is in there. 9 times out of 10 it's the Brigadier, but sometimes it's Ben, or in this episode sometimes it's Yates. But I would have liked that if, maybe Jo is very resourceful in combat, and then that could at least be something.
Yeah.
And at the very least, I mean, she is doing the best she can, and will go out and try to figure things out herself to help the Doctor. So, so it's not a total like Victoria. Like it's sort of a halfway point between, I guess maybe a halfway point between Jamie and Zoe. So, let's see. We did have the appearance of the other Time Lord. Didn't get his name. We just got him just sort of appearing in thin air. So that I remember the first time we watched that, and that was just a very strange moment. This foppish old man just appears out of nowhere.
Oh, but yes, the bowler had the umbrella, or brolly.
Yeah, so let's see. We got a bit of the Master's powers in this one.
Hypnosis, that was kind of weird, because now, at one point, did Troughton do that? So I think somebody did that. Now, Hartnell did hypnosis with a watch at one point.
Yeah, I think it might have been the first Doctor was breaking hypnosis or something, like, but he did have that. I think maybe the second Doctor had a bit of that, but the Master definitely, like, that seems to be his specialty, is hypnosis. So, and it is interesting because it's not something he uses, I think, too often in modern Doctor Who. I'd have to go over all the Master episodes in that. But another power he seems to have, or maybe not power, but because I think it was from his not sonic screwdriver he had, was when he shrunk that one guy and just put him in the lunchbox, which that is something that the Master does, but he only did it once. You'd be forgiven for forgetting about that.
Yeah.
And it is just sort of weird, like, he shrunk him. Like, why? Why did he do that? Mainly because he only did it once, so it just seems like a strange thing to write in,
Yeah.
And spend the time making that effect.
Now, we must assume that the shrunken guy died, because we never did see him again.
Yeah, I think that is part of it, that anytime he shrinks someone, they do instantly die. So I'm not sure. It's very strange. So it's probably because he does use that occasionally in modern Doctor Who. It's just so strange whenever he does it.
Yeah.
Well, and also too because for this one, they actually green screened the actor and then just made him smaller and put him in the lunchbox. Whereas in episodes of modern Doctor Who, when he shrinks someone, they literally make a tiny little action figure of that character, which is weird that they would do that. Like, that seems like the reverse of the effects capabilities of 1971 versus 2020. So Let's see. Yeah, we did have, again, the introduction of Yates, Captain Yates specifically.
And Sergeant
Benton. Yeah, so...
Now, I'm guessing Brigadier is a Brigadier General. Because I don't know British ranks well enough to know if there's just a... Because there's... I mean, I don't think there's a... I mean, there's like Major, then Colonel, and then there's like, Brevet General, Brigadier General, Major General. So I don't know, but I'm assuming it's short for Brigadier General.
Yeah. Considering we don't really see anyone higher at unit than the Brigadier. He seems to be the highest rank, and then you get into more government officials that have sort of rank in unit. So I would assume then, Brigadier General probably, which is hilarious that means his name is longer. If you go for the full thing, Brigadier General Alistair Gordon Lethbridge Stewart. It's a whole sort of thing. It is really crazy. And also, I'm just noticing, because where we pause the credits is on the Brigadier's credit. Didn't it used to be hyphenated?
Yes, Lethbridge Stewart.
Yeah, which is why they always say that. Otherwise, they would just say Stewart.
Yeah.
So that's a little interesting. Maybe the whoever's doing the credits also did that variant thing. So, I actually noticed that on the last episode I watched in Attack on Titan was called Brave Volunteers, but in there they accidentally put 3 E's, and I noticed, I was like, wait a second, you don't put 3 E's in a row, well, in any word, I think, let alone volunteers. And I was like, someone should go tell them about that. So, yeah. Let's see. So, the Master's plan, I mean, this is very much a Master ridiculous sort of plan. Like, after episodes where it's like, oh, the Silurians, they'll just sort of show up and invade, and I'll have the world see these, aliens in these suits, and we'll go to war, and last one, we'll just blow up the Earth. This time is such an insane plan of, all right, I'm going to invade this plastics factory, and I'm going to have them start making Autons. But the Autons, those are just guards, really. Because what we're really going to start with, first off, we have the chair. And I'm going to force a guy to sit down on this chair.
Now, I said that the chair ate him, but the chair obviously just smothered him.
Yeah.
But it did look like the chair was trying to eat him.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, too. It's like he really had to work to get him to sit down on that chair. And then, once the thing starts going, I guess because it's, it is technically its own Auton, it must have considerable strength to hold him there, because otherwise, why can't you just stand up? So, I'll just assume it's incredibly strong. So, yes, and then use the chairs, but the chair, that's not the ultimate plan. The ultimate plan is daffodils, because he's going to make 450,000 daffodils to kill 450,000 people, and then the country will be weak enough, we will bring in the space octopuses, and then they will invade the Earth and hope that the humans have no defense against this. All while he has to do all of this and deal with the Doctor specifically.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous plan, but definitely a plan that the Master would come up with.
And the other doll, the mutant gingerbread man,
that was just also there to deal with unwanteds, I guess.
But again, if you're going to have a stealth killing machine, wouldn't you want it to not look like again, mutant gingerbread man, or Chucky, where he's obviously got scars all over? No, it should be something that people would readily pick up, so that they would not be frightened of it, and then it would be able to kill them.
It should be some sort of plastic Cabbage Patch doll or something like that. So, I mean, the Master's not a great designer either, apparently. Well, and also you have to bank on the fact that the heat will activate this doll, which they never fully explained the link. Like, sometimes it's sound, sometimes it's heat. So, was it just for the doll? Was it heat? Or did the heat create this frequency or something?
Well, sometimes frequencies can heat things up.
Yeah, I guess it could
that's
be.
Like microwaves. Where it's basically something that makes the molecules work faster, which would essentially, create heat of some kind.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the guy who was driving home starts to sweat, and only then realizes that the heat is turned on, and then turns it off and opens the little. I can't remember what that window is called. But yeah, we used to have them on all cars.
Yeah. So he opens the window, and then that thing falls again because it's too cold. And then, again, you're banking on a lot of this. That this guy, he gets home, he doesn't immediately just throw this away, and instead brings it into his house, puts it in very close proximity to his radiator, and then when he sees this, doll coming at him, he doesn't just drop kick it through a window because it's tiny. And I guess it's solid plastic, but still, I feel like with a good enough kick, unless he was too old and frail, I don't know.
Another interesting kind of non sequitur thing, the doctor throws the bomb through the window, and the next thing, it falls down a cliff and into the water. So that means that the unit headquarters is on the Thames, it's on some river, it's on a lake, because there's now suddenly a large body of water next to it that we've never seen before.
Yeah, the doctor has a riverside view, I guess, if... assuming that unit headquarters is in London, which that would make sense. Everything happens in London in the show anyway. So, yeah. We're not sure.
Here's the thing. There are so many good, fun things about this entire series, these 4 episodes. And yet when we get down to it, there are so many nagging little questions about, wait, you've got a mutant gingerbread man who is activated by sitting on a radiator.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things. These are all very minor nitpicks. They really don't detract from the overall story.
Yeah, we enjoyed it, obviously.
Yeah. It's like I said, I think I said this last episode, that it's a very minor nitpick that we will vocalize very loudly. So yeah, it's... And I do like at least the idea that it's like, all right, this entire crazy, convoluted plan that shouldn't work. It's like, well, that is still very in character for the Master. Like, there's a episode in modern Doctor Who where the Master comes back and it's very strange, where he basically has this device to turn every human into him. So every human, they go through this whole thing, and then it's him. It's that actor as every human. And then he says, oh, yes, well, the human race was always your favorite, Doctor, but now they're the master race. And it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But it's very on brand for the Master to do something that stupid. So, let's see. We had the fight at the quarry, which was interesting. I do like immediately when it's like, oh, bullets aren't going to work on them, that Yates immediately gets in the car and runs that guy off a cliff. Yeah. So,
and again, talk about good stunt work.
Yeah.
That guy falling down that hill, I mean, even as a stuntman, you would try to not roll, end over end, but side over side. But that guy was sliding and then doing, it's just, wow, it's amazing he didn't break his neck or his back or anything else.
Yeah, Hope they have good insurance at the BBC. So, let's see.
And poor Toberman. I mean, we saw him, about 5 minutes, and that was it. We never saw him again.
Yeah.
I don't even remember him being in the scene where they were beating up the Doctor and Joe.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, all I remember from the first time we saw him, the first time we watched this, was just when we first saw him, and we were like, oh, hey, wait a second. Pretty sure that's the same guy. And yeah, that was the thing, was that the previous week we had watched Tomb of the Cybermen, so we definitely recognized him.
Now, I wonder, and somebody can probably tell us this, I wonder if he had an accent. Like if he was from the Caribbean or from Africa or somewhere where they didn't want him to talk because the accent would give him away. Because he didn't really talk in Tomb of the Cybermen, and then wasn't he in something else?
I want to say...
Was it Evil of the Daleks? Was he in that?
Yeah, that was... I mean, there was a big guy in that one. I don't remember if that was him or not.
Yeah. And then he didn't speak here either. So.
Yeah. I mean, it would also just be interesting if it was... They were just hiring someone to not talk, and it's like, so long as he's not paid by the word,
Yeah.
If he's just paid by screen time, it's like, that's not a bad job, You just show up, sort of hold a guy, and then that's it. You don't have to remember your lines or anything.
Well, your mother always laughs at me. I did have a network appearance on NBC. I did an episode of a show called Unsolved Mysteries way back when. It was a recreation thing where they take a crime and then they have actors come in to play the people in it. And I did about 8 hours work there. I was a guy who was coming down to Oklahoma City to invest in a medical supply company, which turned out to be a huge scam. And they, of course, they don't want you to talk. And Robert Stack was narrating over the whole thing, and we were supposed to just, basically be mouthing words to each other. But there is one point in the whole thing where Stack stopped talking, and the other guy, the guy who's the con man, had 4 or 5 words, and it was something about we can't let you into this fenced off area because of federal regulations or anything. And I just mouthed the words, "Oh, for security, sure." That actually showed up when it was broadcast. You could actually hear me saying, "Oh, for security, sure." So I made $1,800 for one day's work, and Mom always says that literally for 3 words I made $600 a word. For security, sure, $600 a word. So
well, that's not too bad. So
yes, TV work and film work are very good if you can get it. The thing is, though, as a stage actor, where you have immediate feedback from the audience. You're on stage for 2 hours and you know exactly how the audience felt. We filmed that probably in like February or March. It didn't really even air until like April or May or something like that. So months later, and of course we had to film it 2 or 3 times. They always do 3 or 4 takes just to make sure that they get everything right.
Yeah.
And when it came on, it's like, okay, I was really boring. I thought I was really boring. And what's really, really odd about it is, despite the fact that they didn't want to put any dialogue in it, the main reason that they selected me and not somebody else, there were 2 or 3 guys that looked like the real guy, but all the other actors who showed up had very heavy Oklahoma accents. And this guy was supposed to be from Chicago. So, I had just a little bit of a Chicago accent, though, for security, sure. So, and that's seriously, they told me later, we hired you because you didn't sound like you were from Oklahoma. Even though I wasn't supposed to talk to be heard by the actual audience. So,
yeah.
Anyway, get back to this. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. They enjoy it anyway. Well, it's just interesting. You say about the immediate feedback. We're sitting here. You're gonna hear feedback in like 2 weeks or so.
Yes, but you and I have a kind of a feedback going here.
That's true. I mean, that's even always the thing I say is that when I make jokes and stuff, I at least have my camera and I look at the feedback is seeing how stupid I am on camera. So, but at least, yes, if you were doing a reaction on your own, that would be a lot different. Yeah. So, let's see. We had everything with the taking the dematerialization circuit from his TARDIS, which was interesting. And again, trapping him on Earth. Like, I knew, like, okay, yeah, the Master will come back. I'm sure this season too. But I didn't even think about that as like, oh, he's trapped on Earth too. So that just presents the opportunity he could be back next episode with some other ridiculous plan. So I do like that.
What is the next episode, by the way? What's the next serial?
Next one is The Mind of Evil. That's about the best we got on that. So,
okay.
Very, very vague sort of title. Let's see. Well, we almost had a airstrike by the RAF. It's pretty serious when the Brigadier calls in the RAF. Yeah. So, you would think, like, he doesn't do that with the Cybermen or literally anything else. Like, no, there's the Autons, these plastic guys. Yeah. But it was pretty serious. But I mean,
I wonder what the closest RAF base to London would be, because Lakenheath and Mildenhall are 70, 75 miles almost due north of London. They're in East Anglia. It's either in Norfolk or Suffolk. I can never remember. But again, there are 2 Air Force bases literally within 5 miles, or 2. They're Royal Air Force bases that were also being used as American Air Force bases for the Strategic Air Command.
Yeah. So, let's see. We did have the one meeting between the Doctor and the Master in Part 4, which was a good sort of meeting of the minds. You know, a good Sherlock and Moriarty or James Bond and whatever movie villain they have there. So that was really good. I like that. And then everything else, while it was a little sudden how the Master basically had to turn on the Nestines at the end, at the very least, like, I did sort of like immediately they're both sort of thinking of what to do, and then they come up with something, and then they work together to get rid of the Nestines. I did at least like that.
But again, while they're making sure that everything has worked, the Master slips out. That's one thing. But then he manages to get all the way down that tower, and none of the soldiers down there bother to stop him?
Yeah, either that or he's just that stealthy, I guess. I mean, he managed to get away from the Doctor and the Brigadier. Maybe.
Yes, but they were pretty much occupied elsewhere. So, again, just once the Brigadier turned his attention to the Doctor, and the Doctor was making sure everything was set, him slipping out the door is one thing. But getting down that entire tower, because let's face it, that's very, very tall.
Yeah.
And all those soldiers down there at the bottom, and the Master manages to run over to the bus, put a mask onto Farrell, have Farrell go out and get shot, and then he drives away. Again, it just... Okay, we need to suspend our disbelief.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that was pretty much all I had on the notes. Next up, because this video needs to be longer, we do have a Twitter Q&A. I have to find the tweet that I had this on, and then I'll zoom it in. Where did I put it? Here it is. And I will zoom in so we can actually read this. Alrighty, so we do have questions for this, and this is a general, Terror of the Autons and Pertwee as a whole. So, let's go ahead and jump into these questions. We'll try not to do this for like half an hour or so. We'll try to power through these a little fast. So, from your point of view, which era of Doctor Who you've seen so far, new or classic, has been the most political? This is an interesting question because I do hear, especially in relation to the 13th Doctor, that when people say that, modern Doctor Who, it's getting too political and stuff, people will say, yeah, go back to Pertwee. He was doing that long before modern Doctor Who.
Yeah. And I don't see the majority of classic Who that we've seen so far to be political in as much as it's topical.
Yeah.
Because we do see a lot of stuff about the environment and, past mistakes and how we should learn from them and things like that. Whether it's, religious or whatever. And I haven't seen enough of New Who to be able to say anything. The couple of episodes that I've seen that you've shown me don't seem to be political at all. But then, I haven't seen but 4 or 5 episodes there.
Right. For modern Doctor Who, it kind of depends. I think when most people say like, oh, well, it's getting too political, they also sort of dip into, oh, maybe it's getting too woke and stuff like that. And at that point, I just sort of ignored those arguments. But
that's what science fiction is supposed to do.
Yeah, and it being topical, you do definitely still see that in modern Doctor Who. There's only the occasional episode that gets a little bit too preachy, and the 13th Doctor does sort of suffer from this a little, where there was one episode where they end up on this like dead planet basically, and there's all these like crazy monsters and stuff, and at the end it's basically revealed to be the Earth in the future.
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, basically. And the Doctor says like, oh, well, that's just a, possible future. Humans, they still have a chance to change that. And it literally is, the camera's on her and she says, humans, you need to change that or else, and it just cuts to the monster screaming and it's the end of the episode. And that episode sucked. But then like 2 episodes later, they had one more about like plastics and stuff like that, and it was like 1,000 times better. Like, it still has more of an environmental message, but it still worked within the story, and it was a good story, and it wasn't just a, hey, Captain Planet's going to come over here and teach you a lesson about stuff. So,
all right. Thank you, Tom.
Yes. Our next question. Who are 3 classic characters that Richard would like to see in the 60th anniversary special?
Well, I always want to see the first Doctor come back to do anything.
Yeah.
And I understand there's a thing in Capaldi where the first Doctor meets him during World War I or something.
Yes, basically. And for that, they used the actor that played Hartnell in An Adventure in Space and Time, and he just played the first Doctor.
Cool.
So,
now, again, I like Troughton, I like Pertwee. Tom Baker always struck me as very funny. Again, that kind of whimsical thing. Now, again, I haven't seen all of his stuff, and from what I have seen of him, I like his quirkiness.
Yeah.
And of the other Doctors, who's the one with Ace?
McCoy. Sylvester McCoy.
Okay. Yeah, he was, again, I like the quirkiness of them.
Yeah.
But again, the one episode that I saw of Christopher Eccleston, I thought that's funny. I mean, if you're going to take the Doctor in a new way, making him young, making the guy with the leather jacket, with the Oop North accent and everything, that was kind of fun. I mean, I enjoyed what they did by taking it in a new direction and yet keeping everything else that was literally 50 years of history behind him. So Hartnell, Baker, and McCoy would be fun.
Yeah. In terms of companions, like classic companions, I know there were a lot of people. If you remember, in the 50th anniversary, they had the whole thing of the moment that becomes sentient and then basically guides the War Doctor to not use that power to destroy Gallifrey and sends him to the 10th and 11th Doctors. And a lot of people said that should have been Susan. And I'm pretty sure Carol Ann Ford is still alive, so I would like to see her back, even for just a cameo in the 60th, So, which I guess we are getting really close to that, aren't we? 2023 will be the 60th. And I know that they just announced the next showrunner for Doctor Who, and it's Russell T Davies, who actually did the 9th and 10th Doctors eras. And I don't know if they're doing a season before he does the 60th or not, or if his first episode back is the 60th. That'd be a little crazy, but who knows, maybe. But yeah, I mean, get as many in there as you can. I mean, honestly, while the 50th anniversary was really great, it would be nice to see a lot of the classic Doctors come back, you know? So,
but again, did they ever bring back either Ian or Barbara? Now, I know in that one episode where they went back to Coal Hill School, we saw that Ian was like the headmaster there.
Yeah.
But even if they can bring back this guy that plays Hartnell, they can find people who would play Barbara and Ian.
I mean, they already cast those actors from Adventure in Space and Time, so you could bring them back as Ian and Barbara on Doctor Who. I think in An Adventure in Space and Time, there was a cameo by William Russell who played Ian.
Yeah.
But that was pretty much it. Other than that, we don't really hear about Ian and Barbara too much.
Yeah.
So,
but again, bring back a new actor to play the young Jamie and bring back Fraser Hines, because he's still alive too.
I think so.
Yeah. And to have him literally confront his earlier self and go, "Ugh, was I really that stupid?" or whatever. That just kind of fun stuff.
You could definitely, because I think part of it with some of the characters is, well, you have to find a reason for why they're so much older and stuff. For the companions, I think you can kind of get away with that. It's like, well, if they were alive, just bring them back now and it's all fine. I know they really have to tap dance around why the previous Doctors look older. Like, they got away with it with Tennant. There's only so much they're going to be able to do with that as time keeps going on. Once you get to the 70th and the 80th anniversary, it might be Tennant might start looking a little older.
Although he's in his 50s now, isn't he? Or is he that old?
I think he's around 50, yeah.
And I mean, still looks like he's 25.
Yeah.
I hate him.
So, Yeah. And Matt Smith, I think Matt Smith was 25 when he took the role. I think he was like the youngest actor to take on the role of the
he's
Doctor.
got to be about in his 40s now, at least. Late 30s or early 40s.
Yeah, so he's good. And I think Capaldi still looks the same.
Yeah.
We saw him in Suicide Squad, so he looked about the same, minus the hair. Instead, he had all the spikes and stuff. So, I mean, any characters to bring back, all of them, if you can. Bring back as many actors for the Master, too, if you can. So,
all right. Thank you, Patrick.
Next up, what are your thoughts on what the dynamic between the Doctor and the Master could look like as we move forward and progress through Pertwee's era? That's a very good question, especially since, we're definitely going to get more of him after the ending of that episode. I mean, definitely I could see him almost being the villain of every episode. He's just creating this new plan. But I'd also like to see a bit where maybe like something else is just sort of happening, and maybe he tries to snake his way into the plot, or he happens to be doing something else at the time. So
that's the way Conan Doyle described Moriarty, the Napoleon of crime, and he has Holmes say something like he's like a spider and he sits in the middle of this web of crime, and every vibration on the web he's aware of. So that could be, basically we see the Master. If we don't see him specifically in the episodes, we'll know that this is part of his, overall plan to find a way to get off of the planet.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know too much about Sherlock other than when I reacted to the show. Go watch those reactions if you haven't. But that was always the thing in that show too, was that in some way Moriarty was involved pretty much with every episode and every crime that happened, even if it was just sort of he knew about it or something. So I could definitely see that with the Master as we move forward.
And I probably told you this before. 1980, I played young Dr. Watson in Curse of the Sign of Four, which is like the second or third of the original novels. But in order to prepare, I went out and bought the annotated Sherlock Holmes. Sir William Baring-Gould wrote this, and it's like 3 volumes. I read every one of the novels and every one of the short stories, and a lot of the takeoffs on Holmes, what was his name? Solar Ponds, and several others. Just again, so I could get a feel for who Dr. Watson really was. So that was always fun.
Well, yeah.
All right, that was Chaz. Thank you.
Next up, with your dad being a big history fan, what time period or historical event would he like the Doctor to visit? Well, first off, it would be nice if the Third Doctor visited any historical event. We haven't gone back in time in a while, so
yeah. I was kind of sad that was it the Chase that they went back to ancient Egypt but didn't really do anything there. I mean, it was there. It was basically just a stopping point where they were trying to hide out, and they left the monk there with his TARDIS changed into a pyramid or something like that.
It was. I think it was the Daleks' master plan, actually.
Oh, okay.
And there was like a little bit of like the Egyptians fighting the Daleks, I think.
Yeah.
But they weren't there for a story there. It was just, like you said, a stopping point.
But we had the Crusades, we had the gunfighters, we've had the Aztecs. So again, a specific point in history, we had the Romans. Ancient Greece, Mesopotamia would have been a lot of fun. We had Marco Polo in medieval China. But going back to like the construction of the wall, that sort of thing, just literally almost any time before the 20th century, I would, and of course we had the Civil War in the War Games.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, the Crusade was one of my favorites. I love the Aztecs, and again, we love the gunfighters because it was so incredibly hysterical to put the Doctor in that specific situation, have people think that he was Doc Holliday.
Yeah.
Seriously, any historical. That's what got me hooked on Doctor Who in the first place, is being both a science fiction and a history fan. Both of those coming together back in 1963 when I first started watching it is what what made me continue watching it right until the time that we came back to the States.
Yeah, and I know when we do the next time we rewatch an episode, which will be Curse of Peladon, we're also going to be doing another modern episode, and that'll be the 13th Doctor. I haven't solidified what episode we're going to be doing, but at the very least, I know it's going to be one of the historicals specifically, because those are, in my opinion, that's the 13th Doctor at her best when she goes back to history.
Yeah. And history without the aliens, history without all of that. I mean, I seriously, when they went and saw the Trojan War, because here you've got this guy who has so much technology in his head, and he's watching these people who are literally still fighting with bows and arrows and bronze swords and shields and things like that. That is, to me, that is what Doctor Who is. You got the science fiction mixed in with these what we would consider historically primitive people, and then trying to come up with a coherent story there. And again, the idea that the Doctor is so frustrated that Agamemnon and Menelaus can't figure out how to breach the walls of Troy, and finally the Doctor says, it's a horse. Just do a horse.
Yeah, so anything.
All right. Yeah, anything. Seriously.
All right. Production question. It happened during the second Doctor's stories too, but it was more noticeable in color. BBC filming, i.e. video for studio/interior, film for outside. I believe American shows of the era usually just use one medium. Do you find the switch between them jarring?
I don't. I mean,
no.
It makes perfect sense back then, because to take the television cameras outdoors at this time was very, very difficult.
Yeah.
The television camera was this gigantic thing. I mean, just this huge thing. And they didn't become much smaller until much, much, much later, like into the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
So, no, it's very obvious when we go between. I mean, yes, you can tell the difference between the outdoor and the indoor, but no, it doesn't bother me, because that's what we grew up with.
Yeah, for something like when they go into a tent or something, it's like, okay, they obviously built this tent in the studio, but we're supposed to have it be, no, it's outside. It honestly doesn't bother me. The most I notice when we're watching these is whenever it goes to a green screen or blue screen, whichever it was. Yeah. Those are the most noticeable, and even then, they're not bad for the most part. Yeah. And especially the effects they did on the doll and the shrunken man and stuff. Those were actually really good.
Yeah.
But it's the occasional when they have, just a person in front of a green screened background. I notice it, but it really doesn't take me out of it. Yeah. I just oh, hey, look at that.
Yeah.
So
that's from Soup Dragon.
Yep. Twitter. Next up, with the 14th Doctor on the way, who would be your dream casting for the Doctor? Well, we kind of talked about this recently. But, I mean, probably first thing in my head is Michael Sheen. So, and I have, ever since I first heard it, in the back of my head, I thought, well, Idris Elba would be hilarious. But that would also be very strange, I think.
Yeah.
So,
the guy that was in that lockdown film, Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Oh yeah,
would also be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Trying to think if there's, Daniel Craig. Somebody, Pierce Brosnan. He's getting into his late 60s, 70s now. Would be kind of fun. All these leftover James Bonds.
Yeah, I mean Daniel Craig just finished James Bond.
Yeah.
So,
but of course, I doubt that they would want to do a weekly series, even though the New Who is not as weekly as this one used to be.
Yeah.
But again, possibly branching out. Finding somebody who is not specifically, and I know this goes against literally everything Doctor Who is about, but finding somebody who is not specifically tied to, England, Scotland, Wales, or Ireland.
I've been saying for a little while that Pedro Pascal, I think, would be a really good Doctor. I think he would be a lot of fun. And now, you wouldn't get that from The Mandalorian, but if you watch him in Wonder Woman 1984, or even he was also in one season of Game of Thrones, and I think he would be really good, this fun, eccentric Doctor.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are our choices. And then last question, is there any upcoming stories you've been told that are massive fan favorites you're worried you won't like as much, like Power of the Daleks? Oh, almost any of them.
I haven't heard, though. That's the thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it just sort of depends. You know, we kind of joke that, we kind of walk on eggshells with our opinions on these episodes. But, I mean, sometimes, like, well, mainly because it always kind of happens after the fact, and mainly because of how we record these. So, you know, we'll start watching, like, Inferno, and we'll think, oh, okay, well, that's, you know, it's very interesting with the whole thing of the parallel universe. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's good. It's not where I expected us to go, and we'll have to see how it ends. But so far, it's pretty good. And then, you know, I'll hear, oh, yeah, Inferno is, like, the best episode of the Pertwee era. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, well, I'm 4 episodes in. I don't think it's the favorite of that season, but it's still pretty good.
I think, so far, because of that twist, it was one of their best, but again, Stallman's overbearing personality is what keeps Inferno from being the War Games. I mean, let's face it, the War Games was head and shoulders above anything else we had ever seen.
Yeah, definitely.
And the twist in that story was so good and so coming out of nowhere and so brilliantly done that the only thing that literally almost like dragged it down like an anchor was Stallman's performance. And again, that's not the actor's fault. That was the writer's fault and the director's fault for not toning that down and making him a little less obnoxious.
Yeah. Well, and also just the fact that then it's never... Mainly because that whole thing is tied to the goo that they unearth. Yeah. And they just never explain it.
Yeah.
And they don't... Because they never also question it. Like, okay, if you don't want to, like, give specific details, like, this is when the goo was born, and it lived this entire life before finally possessing Stallman, that's all completely fine. You could at least ask the question, the doctor, you know, if the doctor was just like, well, now I wonder why on earth did these people turn into werewolves? I don't know.
Yeah.
Some things we can't explain.
And who's the engineer that ended up with, what's her name? The woman that was assistant to Stallman.
Sutton was the guy.
Sutton, all right.
Yeah.
So Sutton's an engineer. He saw some of that goo leaking out, didn't he?
I thought so.
I thought he did too. And so just to say, you know, say to somebody, whether it's the brigadier or the doctor or to Liz, you know, what struck me as odd is when it was leaking, there seemed to be this very unusual substance. Now, again, if somebody could just say, well, that's a substance that's obviously been in the core of the Earth for billions of years, we have no idea what it is, but obviously it's influencing people. That's, I mean, seriously, one line of explanation would have been fine.
Well, and even, because they did have that moment where they had the goo in the thing, and, like, Stallman touched it, and then after that, you know, the doctor was very suspicious of him. But the fact that the doctor, it's just like, this is just a hostile force that lives under the Earth's crust. I mean, yeah, I guess you have to really work to, you know, unearth this stuff, but say something about it. Just even if you don't give a full Wikipedia article about what this goo is, could you give me some idea?
We have said this from the very beginning. There are so many scripts where one single line of dialogue to just offer the hint of an explanation would have saved half a dozen of these scripts.
Yeah, and I want to point out, we did not bring up Power of the Daleks on this. They brought up Power of the Daleks on this. But that's another example. Like, just you remember the rebellion in that one.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's a rebellion at this base. Why? Like,
low pay, over, you know, working too long hours.
Should we side with them? It's like, well, they're rebelling for a reason. We don't know why. I guess, yeah, we have to worry about the Daleks, but you can't just say there's a rebellion without saying why. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like, yes, I don't need every last detail explained to me and spoon-fed to me on a silver platter. But you gotta say something.
Seriously, one line of dialogue. That's
all
it takes. And again, having been a writer, I understand that way more than you probably would. But you understand it, and you and I both have come to the agreement. There are so many times when just, seriously, one line of dialogue would have made the episode so much better for us.
Yeah. And then if we miss the line of dialogue, well, then that's our own fault.
Yeah.
So,
which we do.
Yeah, which is entirely... I mean, we have subtitles and everything, but we still miss stuff. Yeah. But, anywho, but you know what didn't have that problem? This episode. No. This episode didn't really have that problem. So,
yeah, very, very
with the exception of, like, Yates, but that's really minor. That's not, you know... Yates isn't the goo villain of the episode, so that's fine. He's just another guy. It's fine.
Yeah. No, wait. Yates was one of the unit guys.
Yeah. Okay. It's just his sudden introduction, basically.
Okay.
So that's all good. That's just a minor thing. But anyway, yeah. We are on, let's see, it's been 2 hours and 43 minutes.
Wow.
Since it's a very long recording we've had here today. And we still have another thing to record today.
So I'm thinking we should go grab some burgers first.
Yeah, we're gonna break for lunch. And then we'll be back with the 12th Doctor episode, which again will be its own separate video. That if you started watching this video the exact second it went up, that video is probably out by now because I imagine this is well over an hour long. So, you got anything else?
I got nothing.
Then we'll see you guys on the next one. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around to any of those. There's a playlist for all of our Doctor Who classic reactions. There's probably also a little way that you can easily go jump right into Mummy on the Orient Express. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.